What is up? Welcome to the No Pun Intended, a look inside series. We have 22 teams finished already, about 11 teams to go. Today we are looking at the Green Bay Packers. That would be 10 teams. What terrible math on my part. But today we are looking at the Green Bay Packers, an offense filled with firepower. But are they going to actually be a good offense again this year? That is the question we have to answer. If you've not followed along with this series, we are going to break down the entire offense, what we like about it, what we don't like about it, if we think the ADP is fair, and we're even going to give you some of our favorite bets. Let's get into it. What is up? Welcome to No Pun Intended. This is our Look Inside series. No Joe Zolo this week. Ryan Weisse in the host chair, and that means Josh Hudson is the expert this week. How are you doing today, Josh?
Expert is a little fast and loose, but, I'll take the compliment.
Let's be perfectly clear. There are very few in this industry who ever deserve that title. I can think maybe Bob Harris off the top of my head. Expert is fast and loose with any of us that choose to use that title. We use it pretty facetiously here. Josh, today we are looking at the Green Bay Packers. We have done so many of these. It has been a very different summer because this is the first year where we're shooting them as individual episodes, but I'm liking how the flow and the vibe is going with these. So
I agree. I like kind of doing them, individually. We're not as hamstrung with time because sometimes there is a little bit more to talk about, whether it's individual players or just kind of like breaking down like our expectations and trends that we're looking at with each individual team, because play calling is so incredibly important, and I feel like it's become a lost art with so many especially casual fantasy football players.
Yeah, and that's something you and I have really latched onto since we started doing projections 5, 6, 7 years ago. So it's something that we like to look into, and we like to share that with our audience. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying it. If you, as I mentioned, this is episode 23, so there are 22 of these live on our site right now. There are also 22 of these articles, 23 as of today, on our website, clubfantasyffl.com. We have an article to go with every team. In those articles, we focus on one player, and then we break down the rest of the players in like blurbs at the end. For this episode, we kind of break down our favorite or least favorite plays, but we do start with the offense and the play callers. As Josh mentioned, let's get into it. 11-6 for the Green Bay Packers last year. No changes at all. It's the Mike LaFleur offense. He is the head coach. He is the play caller. We're going to get that same thing. The ADPs we're about to give you are all based on underdog rankings. If you guys are not currently playing on underdog and would like to get started, I would encourage you to use promo code WOFF, WOFF. That's going to get you a free pick plus a deposit match up to $1,000. If you guys use that promo code, it helps us a little, it helps you a little, and it gets you involved in some best ball and player pick'ems and all the cool stuff they offer over there at Underdog. But as I mentioned, the ADPs we're using are as of yesterday on Underdog. We always focus on Underdog at this time of year because there's skin in the game. The ADP makes a little bit more sense because players actually care about these drafts. And mock drafts, people can get a little willy-nilly, a little wild sometimes. But when you're doing these best ball drafts, the ADP just makes a little bit more sense. The Packers starting quarterback is going to be Jordan Love. He is going off the board as the QB 18 in fantasy drafts. Starting running back is Josh Jacobs. He's the RB10 in fantasy drafts. Backing Jacobs up should be last year's rookie who didn't play much, Marshawn Lloyd. He's the RB60. The guy who did play last year, Emmanuel Wilson, is going off as the RB87. At wide receiver, calling any of these guys as the 1, 2, 3, or 4 makes almost no sense if you know anything about this Packers offense. But we're going to call Jaden Reed the wide receiver 1. He is the wide receiver 43 in fantasy football. Rookie Matthew Golden is actually going one spot ahead of Reed, the wide receiver 42. Romeo Doubs is still on the team. He's going off as the wide receiver 65. And Dontavian Wicks is listed as the wide receiver 4 because Christian Watson is hurt again already. Wicks is going off as the wide receiver 86. And then a club fantasy favorite, if you've been following along with any episode, the starting tight end for the Green Bay Packers is going to be Tucker Kraft. He's currently going off of boards off of tight end 11. And as Josh pointed out, That's about 4 spots higher than when we started telling you guys that you need to draft Tucker Kraft. So clearly
people are listening to
we are
us.
swinging the fantasy industry. If you want to hear more about Tucker Kraft, you're not going to hear it on this show because we keep talking about it. However, there is an article live on our website by the great Joel Worth. He is going to be covering the starting tight end for the Green Bay Packers, amongst other things, because Joel knows his Packers. Josh, as we get into this, when you look at this Green Bay offense, it's one that feels like it should be very fantasy friendly, but it's also a little bit of a headache sometimes. What are your thoughts?
This offense is very best ball friendly. Okay.
Ooh, yeah,
I want to preface this because this team will spread the football around. I find it very interesting that since this team jettisoned Devontae Adams, not a single player has ever topped an 18% target share in the last 3 years.
Interesting.
And that went from Devontae Adams at 165 targets to the following year, the wide receiver one had no more than 100. Like that is what Matt LaFleur or Mike LaFleur wants to run with. Actually, no, it is Matt LaFleur. I completely.
So when you corrected,
the brother is Mike, who's the OC in with the
when
Rams.
you corrected
That's my
yourself,
fault.
you gave me a heart attack. I'm like, oh God, did I say the wrong name? But no, you did.
Let me change that in the show sheet just because I need to. Anyway, Matt LaFleur. He wants to spread the football around. He's going to run the football. He's going to spread the football around. And that's going to be the basis of this offense. There's no legitimately true number one guy. And he's gotten Jordan Love to buy into that. Last season, the top 4 pass catchers on this team fell between 14.5% target share and not a single one hit 16%.
Yeah.
That is how this offense works. So it makes it very frustrating from a season-long redraft perspective on trying to figure out who is going to lead this team in target share, who's going to be the top offensive weapon. But as I mentioned, it makes it very best ball friendly because as you read off, Ryan, the wide receiver one, quote unquote, wide receiver 42, 43 range, right? Like that's a steal when it comes to production because these guys are going to finish in the top 30 in production. And they're going to have some crazy pop weeks, but they're also going to have 3.5 point weeks. They're going to have 9.7 point weeks where you don't want to feel good about starting them. But in best ball, it doesn't matter because you probably have somebody else on your team that takes that starting spot in a given week. But the one thing I do know is that they're going to run a ton of 12 personnel, which means only 2 wide receivers are going to be on the field, 2 tight ends going to be on the field. Tucker Kraft is going to see a lot of passing down work. He was one of those guys between 14.5 and 16% target share last year. Romeo Doubs actually led this team in targets per game last year, but we all know how unappealing he was for fantasy because he's kind of a jag. He doesn't do much else, but Jordan Love likes him. He's kind of a head case. He wants more. But the problem is he's not very athletic. There are more athletic guys. But Jaden Reed is so small, he comes off the field when they run all this 12 personnel. They have to manufacture touches for him. So when you draft a wide receiver in the first round and you have guys like Reed and Kraft that do so well with the football in their hands, what's going to be the outcome?
Yeah.
Wicks can't catch the football. That hasn't changed through 3 seasons. Dobbs is unappealing. That hasn't changed through 3 seasons. So, like, they need to focus this passing game around Kraft and Reed and get Matthew Golden stretching the field to take pressure off of those short underneath guys and let the guys that do well when it comes to yards after the catch do their thing. That is what makes the San Francisco offense so good. Guess where this LaFleur Packers offense derives from? San Francisco. If they're able to replicate that with these guys, this offense can take another step. We talked about how unappealing Jordan Love was for much of the season. He had 30 touchdown passes last year.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'm going to get into with my player, but I did want to talk about I'm so glad you brought up the San Francisco system. So the year when San Francisco, Debo and Brandon Ayuk were viable fantasy options, if I remember correctly, like neither one of them even hit like 110 targets. It was based on efficiency.
Ayuk was the closest.
Yeah. It was based on like efficiency and touchdowns. That's what it's going to take for someone to be good. And so for my segment of this, I'm actually just going to use this as a cautionary tale, Josh. And this is a tale for me and for Britt Flynn, but for everybody else out there too. When Dontavian Wicks pops for a week, let's not make him our first waiver wire grab, because he's not going to be good the next week. When Christian Watson comes back and goes for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns, let's not make him the first waiver wire grab. We're going to see big things from this passing game, but he's going to spread it out so much that you're chasing last week's points. And that's a way to waste fab. Don't do it. So when a Green Bay wide receiver pops, don't go buy him off of your friends. Don't go buy him off of the waiver wire. Now, the Green Bay running game, Josh, which you're going to talk a little bit about, I think there's some consistency there that we can have some fun with. But when it comes to this Green Bay passing game, I'll put it this simply, and I said we weren't going to talk about it much on this show, but who's the player you want from San Francisco? It's George Kittle. Well, guess who the player you want from Green Bay's passing game is? It's Tucker Kraft, folks. So don't forget that when you're in your fantasy drafts and he's going way, way too late. And Josh, I'll just transition into that Green Bay passing game before we let you talk about the fun stuff, the Green Bay running game. And you kind of hit the nail on the head of exactly where I was going to go when talking about Jordan Love. And just to tell you guys the process, Josh creates these great show sheets, and we go in and we highlight the people we want to talk about. And Josh, I immediately highlighted Jayden Reed. And then in my head had the conversation that you and I just had and said, I am not about to spend 5 to 10 minutes talking about Jayden Reed, where at the end of it, you still don't know if you want him on your fantasy team. I have Jayden Reed about 10 spots of his ADP right now ahead of his ADP. I will take some Jayden Reed just because I can't quit him. But to Josh's point in my projections, I only have him at about 91 targets. That is not someone you're going into your fantasy draft targeting. Jordan Love, however, Josh, and this is going to kind of be a theme for today's shows for me, is we for years have told people to draft our quarterbacks late. And Jordan Love, this is probably the 5th quarterback I've mentioned on this series, is one of those guys of why you draft your quarterbacks late. Jordan Love is free in your home league fantasy draft. He's going off as the QB 18 in best ball drafts, which means he's probably not being drafted in your home league. And if he is, it's very late. And Josh hit exactly where I was going to go with this. Jordan Love last year, the yardage numbers weren't fantastic, 3,400, just under 3,400, but 25 touchdowns and then added another one rushing. This is a passing game that is very feasible for fantasy managers to plug in and play. You don't need to know who the target is if he has a bunch of good targets. It reminds me, Josh, of when Ben Roethlisberger wasn't very good, but they had Antonio Brown and I think it was Martavius Bryant had a good year, and Juju Smith-Schuster, where the weapons made Ben Roethlisberger viable for fantasy. That's exactly what's happening here with Jordan Love. But the other thing about Jordan Love is he gives you that little bit of a sneaky rushing game where he seems to find the end zone every single season. Well, I guess that's not true. The last 2 seasons. Well, those are his 2 seasons as a starter.
Those are his 2 seasons as a starter.
Yeah. So last year, obviously, he missed some time, 15 games played, only 83 rushing yards, but still found the end zone. The year before that, he doubled his rushing attempts from this previous year, 50 rushing attempts, 247 yards, and found the end zone 4 times. As Josh mentioned, over 30 touchdowns in 2023. With the addition of Matthew Golden, with the emergence of Tucker Kraft, and then, Jayden Reed and Romeo Doubs play in their spot, there's no reason to think that Jordan Love can't approach 30 touchdowns again, which makes him a perfectly viable option if you do not want to pay up for the elite quarterbacks, Josh. And so Jordan Love is just another one of those guys that's available at the end of the draft that if he's the guy who's my starting quarterback and I got to take him in the 14th round and load up at wide receivers early in the draft, I'm not going to be upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically Brock Purdy light.
Oh,
that's really what he is.
Well, he's actually Brock Purdy dark.
All right, you want to get technical. All right, fine. But like his 2 years as a starter, his yards per attempt, 7.2, 8.0 last year. His touchdown percentage, 5.5, 5.9% last year. He's making the most of his pass attempts.
Yeah.
That's exactly what makes Brock Purdy so successful for fantasy football.
Absolutely.
And instead of drafting Purdy in the top 10, you draft Jordan Love in the top 20 and you're getting that same kind of production. Yes, Jordan Love missed a couple of games last year. That's why the numbers, quote unquote, aren't as sexy. They don't pop off the page as much. But when you look at the points per game, it's up there, right? So when you're looking at, and this was, when we did the Bucks episode and we talked about why I don't love, and Baker Mayfield at his current price, it kind of is like why you're drafting him at the ceiling, because there's that whole entire range of quarterbacks that you can draft between 7 and probably 20, truthfully, that have that same kind of upside where they can hit 4,000 passing yards, they can hit 30 touchdowns. Jordan Love has literally done that.
Yeah.
So why draft Baker at QB7 when you can take the chance and draft Jordan Love at QB18 and potentially get the exact same production?
100%. And Josh, I just sent you a message and I'm still saying it out loud. Like, this gives me an idea for another show or an article for us, because we're becoming kind of famous for this, because last year we told you, instead of Anthony Richardson, wait 7 rounds and take Jaden Daniels. And that was a home run for us. And that's how we feel about a lot of these. I hate to call Baker Mayfield mid, but that's how we feel about a lot of these mid guys that are still being drafted in the top 10, Josh, is instead of taking Baker Mayfield or Brock Purdy, wait 5 rounds, 6 rounds and take Jordan Love, or who I'm going to talk about in a couple of episodes, JJ McCarthy. It's just, there are options out there that are late, that are interesting, that don't require you to spend a huge amount of draft capital and let you get the more important positions that aren't onesie positions out of the way and develop a bench. So Josh, as we've talked about, for fantasy managers, this is a best ball passing offense because of the inconsistency. I don't know where you're going to go with this because we haven't talked, but I feel like the rushing game, certainly since Josh Jacobs took over last year, feels a lot more consistent.
Yeah, I think with Josh Jacobs, it's really interesting because I've kind of been on the train of like, when he's up, he always finds a way to come back down, right? Like they ran him a lot last year, 301 total touch or rush attempts last year, 337 total touches, but then added an additional 38 touches in 2 playoff games, right? Yeah. So you're looking at a guy that's coming off of a 375 touch season.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a running back. Now, I want to give a shout out to one of your colleagues at Football Guys, Jeff Blaylock. I came across his Twitter thread the day before recording this called The Scourge of 600, which basically takes into account running backs that over a 2-season period see 600 or more touches. Josh Jacobs has succumbed to this, quote, curse already once in his career, okay? Between 2021 and 2022, he totaled 681 touches. And then in 2023, completely did a nosedive.
Yep.
And finished as the RB28 overall. Okay. He finished as the RB6 last year, RB8 in points per game. And if you combine what he did in 2023 and 2024, he totaled over 600 touches, right? And again, you look at since 2020, RB8, RB15, right? RB8 in total points, 15 in points per game. From RB8 to RB12 to RB3 to RB28 to RB6. What does that tell you this year, folks? I've talked about numerology in the past. Like, that's why I was down on Deebo Samuel last year. Look what happened, right? If the numbers, they're there, like if the production goes up and down, it's okay to believe it, right? But I also think that when they went out and they signed Josh Jacobs, then immediately drafted Marshawn Lloyd, it wasn't because they wanted to give Josh Jacobs over 300 touches in a season.
Yeah.
It's because they said, we're going to run the football. We're going to establish the run. It's going to make everything that we do in the passing game easier. Lloyd just couldn't stay healthy.
Exactly.
So, like, they had to give Josh Jacobs that production. So, looking at past production, history, injuries, all these things with Josh Jacobs, if Marshawn Lloyd stays healthy, Josh Jacobs' production is coming down. Like, it's not going to be, he's going to be a more efficient running back. He's never really been an overly efficient running back. So, like, I mean, you just look at last year. He had the second fewest targets in a season he's ever had.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
there's
the end zone for the first time in his career.
As passing football, yeah.
Yeah, don't go into the season expecting receiving touchdowns from Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, there's just so much in the way of, cautionary tales, I think, that really sort of stand out. And Matt LaFleur called the fewest pass attempts to the running back position in his career last year, only just over 15%. So like they're going to utilize the running backs in the passing game, but it's not going to be near what they're going to utilize the wide receivers and the tight ends. And we're talking about a Tucker Kraft breakout. If the tight end is going to break out, what does that mean? Less targets for the running back position, plain and simple. Yeah. So like, don't expect even the same level of pass attempts to the running back position. Maybe expect a fewer percentage, right? Like he statted out as my RB16 this year. And his production, when you look at it, doesn't come down a whole lot. Yeah. But if he's my RB16 and he's going off as the RB10, that's out of my price range, in my opinion, right? Like there's other running backs that I like more. Yeah, like I'm not going to pay up for him. If he comes down, like if he's more of a, round 5 pick, sure, I'll take him at that price range, right? But that's not where he's going. So, last year was sort of the year of the running back. It's okay to expect the year of the running back to come back a little bit, right?
Well, yeah.
This is natural regression.
Well, I mean, and you wrote about it in your Saquon Barkley article, as you mentioned. Jeff did the great Twitter thread. I am blanking. Gary over at Football Guys also wrote an article about the curse of 370 or whatever it is with all the touches. And while Jacobs didn't hit that number, he still touched the ball 337 times last year. And it's not like we're talking, I in all of your thing, I don't think you even brought up his age. This is a 27-year-old running back, Josh. This means he is likely on his last contract. He's on his last legs. We talked about this deal with Green Bay, Josh, that everyone freaked out.
They had it after last year.
Well, they have it out after every year. That was the thing is everyone freaked out that he got a 4-year deal, but they wrote it as such that they can get out of it at any time. And so if they start to see a decline, they're going to lean on certainly Marshawn Lloyd and these younger running backs. And I think it's an interesting point that we got more from Josh Jacobs as a passer than I think what we expected. And obviously he's shown chops as a passer, but you brought up they threw the ball the least amount, but Josh Jacobs still saw 40 targets. If they go into this season with Emmanuel Wilson a little bit better, Marshawn Lloyd a little bit healthier, they're unlikely to throw the ball to the running back a ton more because of the weapons that are everywhere else. What that means is the pie is getting smaller for Josh Jacobs. So I guess I predicted wrong that we weren't going to talk about the consistency of the Green Bay offense. We were going to talk about the aberration that was 2024, and maybe don't buy too heavily into Josh Jacobs this season.
Well, and really what I think it boils down to is, how healthy will Marshawn Lloyd be, right? Like, I don't want to label a guy as injury prone after 1 year.
Yeah.
But again, Josh Jacobs has been in the league now 5 seasons, whatever it's been. And the stats literally tell you he goes up and down. He's only twice played a full season in his career. So, and he's coming off a season with 375 touches. They're either going to ease him in and he's going to have some games where he's not going to be near as involved. They're going to get more of Wilson and Lloyd, into that rotation. Jacobs has always been a volume back. Like he's somebody that really doesn't operate well when given fewer touches. He's not as efficient. So if they do end up cutting his carries to keep him healthy, are we sure he's going to be very effective as a runner? Because when if you're saying, hey, I'm going to take a season and I'm going to limit what Adrian Peterson does. We all know Adrian Peterson got better the more carries he got. Josh Jacobs is kind of built in that same mold. There's quite a few running backs, historically speaking, that they just do better when they're able to grind out defenses and wear them down. The problem is that while Josh Jacobs can do that, it doesn't always translate to the following season.
Yeah.
So Green Bay might have the mentality of, hey, we're going to limit how much Josh Jacobs bruises defenses because we want to keep him healthy, but maybe he's not as effective doing that, which then creates more problems for the Green Bay offense, gives more opportunities to Marshawn Lloyd, or gives a lot more opportunities to that passing game because the rushing offense just isn't as effective.
Yeah, especially when you have such a hyper-efficient passing game that you can use to kind of supplement the running game.
Yep.
Josh, as we move on to the training camp battles to watch, I think this is the one that everyone is actually going to care about, and it's who is the wide receiver one. We've kind of talked. Does it matter? Will we maybe see some consistency? Well, we kind of have the battle down to Jayden Reed versus rookie Matthew Golden versus Romeo Doubs. As you pointed out, Dobbs has led this team before, but there's nothing special about him. Jaden Reed has shown some special, but there's nothing big about him. And Matthew Golden's the new kid on the block. How do you see this thing shaking out?
I think by the end of the season, I'm again, like just looking at the target shares, you're not going to see anybody that truly separates from the pack. Yeah. But I do think the top two in this offense will end up being Reed and Golden. With all of the trade rumors around Romeo Dobbs, it would not surprise me one bit if he's not on this team by the end of the season. Whether that's because they trade him in training camp, whether it's, they pull a surprise deal mid-season at the trade deadline because they like what they see out of Matthew Golden and they feel like they have enough depth because, Christian Watson will be coming back at some point. So like then you have Golden and Watson kind of being that outside threat. You have maybe Dontavian Wicks on the other side. Reed maybe looking at some, moving inside and outside, heading into year 3, showing some more versatility that, they want to get their best playmaker on the field more than 80% of the time, because right now that's not the case. Like they're literally taking him off the field when it comes to 12 personnel. And that limits what you're able to do on offense. But the problem is Reed is just a small guy. He's not a guy that can block. And when you're in 12 personnel, there's a high likelihood that you're running the football, right?
We're gonna need you to block.
Yeah. But you need to be able to disguise your personnel. Like you need to be able to say, hey, if I'm lining up in 12 personnel, there's a chance that I'm throwing the football. And if you get Reed on the field in those instances, that creates that mystery because he is a threat every single time he touches the ball and he scores touchdowns. So like that's a guy that you need to get utilized. Golden, to me, when they made that draft pick, they said, all right, we need somebody that can be a number one guy, that if push comes to shove, we need to be able to hyper target somebody to take over a game because Watson hasn't been consistent. Wicks can't hang on to the football. Dobbs is nothing special. And again, Reed we're consistently taking off of the field. Can Golden be that guy? I think that people want him to be that guy and expect him to be because of the number of breakouts among rookies that we consistently see. I wasn't a huge Golden guy heading into this draft, but I recognize the traits that are there where he can become that, right? There's going to be a developmental curve with him. Yeah. So truthfully, I think we're going to see a lot of the same thing where you have 3 or 4 guys that are grouped in that 15 to maybe 17% target share. Nobody really separates themselves, but you'll see big Reed games. You'll see big Golden games. You might see a big Dobbs game, a few big Kraft games, right? Like that's just kind of how I see it play out. I don't think any of these guys top 90 targets, if I'm being honest.
That's about where they are in my projections. I have Reed at 92, Golden at 90. Golden is the most interesting because obviously he's new. What's interesting about his size is, Josh, I was just looking this up. I don't follow college that closely. Golden's measurables, according to the internet, are the same as Reed's measurables. Obviously, their games very different. But what I wanted to look up here was when Golden was drafted, Joel immediately on our show said he is smaller Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's smaller MVS. So I went and looked at what MVS did in this offense. And of course,
never had more than 70 targets.
I was just going to say, I navigated away, but give me 2 seconds here. But the numbers aren't promising. I think his best average was 5.5 targets a game, but he never also played. Well, he did play full seasons because the full season was 16 games back then. So from 2019 to 2021, when MVS was in this offense, 56 targets, 63 targets. Those were 2 full seasons, folks. And then 55 targets in 11 games. So for that season, he was pacing, because that is a 18-game season, or 17-game season. He was pacing for about 85 targets. But again, he couldn't stay healthy. And MVS is a lot bigger than Matthew Golden, so there could be health concerns there. He also only had 6 touchdowns one time. Every other season, it was 2 or 3. His yards per reception was fantastic. 15, 17, 20, 16. That's exactly what you want, and that's what we're expecting from Matthew Golden. The questions are going to come down to health And can he find the end zone? Because if he's scoring 2 or 3 touchdowns, Josh, if that's what we can expect from him, like what we saw from Marquez Valdez-Scantling early in this offense, 2 or 3 touchdowns is going to make him fantasy irrelevant. And so that's where it's interesting going to shake out when it comes to this wide receiver group.
And that's why I say, like, this offense is going to be better for best ball than it is for a season-long redraft. I mean, currently right now, I have Dobbs as the number 1 target earner at 87 targets. Yeah. Like, I have everybody so, like, split up. Like, I have him at 87. I have Reed at 84. I have Kraft at 81. I have Golden at 77. Like, that's how I have the target distribution right now.
Yep,
like, I just don't see anybody really taking a headway and just running with it. But I think really Kraft becomes the most valuable simply because the tight end position as a whole in fantasy football isn't breaking out as much.
It's easier to climb that ladder.
Exactly. It's a lot easier to climb that ladder. I have Reed as the best finishing wide receiver at 36, but I have Golden at 53 and Dobbs at 56.
We're not very far off. I mean, I have Reed at 30, but again, I have a soft spot.
You probably have them with more overall pass attempts. I have them at 537.
I have him at 540, Josh.
Okay, so not much.
We're close. I have Reed at 92, Golden at 90, Dobbs at 80, and Kraft at 84. So
I did end up giving the running back position a 17% target share, which might be a little high based on last year. But when I look at, previous seasons, that's kind of where it shook out. So I still have Jacobs at 46 targets.
As we wrap up this episode, first and foremost, I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, comment. If you agree or disagree with anything we said about the Green Bay Packers or any of the other 22 videos we've done, feel free to drop those comments. We do a very good job. And by we, I mean Josh, of replying to comments. And if you ever want to tune into one of our live shows, we go live every single Wednesday. We never leave one of those shows without getting a comment up on the screen. So make sure you guys tune in for all of those shows. But as we mentioned earlier in the show, you can sign up for Underdog using promo code WAF. You'll get a free pick. And what that means is you're going to need some best bets. Now, not all of these are available on Underdog, but we end all of these shows with our favorite bets. Josh, what are you liking for the Green Bay Packers?
Not much, if I'm being honest. I don't love a lot of these bets, at least the ones that I'm finding on DraftKings. But the one that I found the most intriguing, Packers to score 1+ passing.
I love these kind of bets, Josh, as you know.
Plus 1,100. I mean, a $10 bet is going to win you pretty decent money and you're not losing a ton. Yeah. I mean, Jordan Love, again, like he averages close to 1.5 touchdowns per game. Like he has a very high touchdown percentage when he plays a full season. He's likely clearing 30 touchdowns. That should balance itself out to well over 1 per game. It's just a matter of, do they have one game where Josh Jacobs decides to go for 3 touchdowns? Like, sure, that could very well happen. It happened last year. But I think the odds being in the favor of this hitting, it makes the most sense from a plus money perspective.
There you go. And I went with the guy who we do have the most faith in this offense, Tucker Kraft. Right away, I didn't love his initial line. It's to score 5 or more touchdowns. It's plus 100. It's double your money territory. You place a $10 bet, they give you $20 back. You win $10 on 10. But there is something interesting to me, Josh, on a small bet at plus 600 for him to score 10 touchdowns, which would be kind of unheard of in this offense, but he found the end zone 7 times last year. And it obviously last year was his first year as like the starter of this offense. So there's a world where Josh Jacobs rushing touchdowns go down and they're looking for some red zone targets. And that's going to be Tucker Kraft at plus 600. I might throw a little bit of money on Tucker Kraft to find the end zone 10 times.
I mean, we've been comparing this offense to a derivative of the 49ers for the whole damn episode. How many times has George Kittle been a red zone threat and scored 10 plus? Like it happens. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Tucker Kraft could replicate one of those types of seasons.
It's unlikely, but that's why it's plus 600, folks. That is going to wrap up the Green Bay Packers episode. As I mentioned, there are 22 of these, now 23 on our site for you guys to check out. We are going to get through every team before your draft start this summer. And next up is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. It's going to be a fun one because it's a whole new quarterback on a very possibly high-powered offense. So that's going to wrap up this episode. Make sure you guys are checking for our live show every single Wednesday, but we also have mock draft shows going on the entire summer. Live on Thursday nights is Mock Girl Summer. Live on Friday nights is Mock It Like It's Hot. We're helping you guys get prepared for your home league drafts, for your big charity drafts, anything that's going on. Club Fantasy is here to help, including articles and rankings on our website, clubfantasyffl.com. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football. We will see you on the next Look Inside episode of the Minnesota Vikings.